My wife, 25 female, didn't have a job, but she was really into gardening. She found opportunities whenever she could to sell potted plants as a vendor at local events. I, 30 male, was working full-time as a director of operations for a shipping company. We were married for 4 years and managed to keep a good balance of work and play. Our friends would come over about 3 times a month. We each only had one close friend that we felt comfortable enough to invite over. My best friend was Wayne and her best friend was Camilla. They were friends with us since middle school. So they were people we trusted enough to have in our home. I was thankful I managed to keep in contact with Wayne over the years. Despite my hectic schedule while we had our friends over, I started noticing that my wife would sometimes talk to Wayne more than Camilla. I wasn't too worried because my wife and Wayne were naturally very talkative while Can and I would often quiet down and listen. I was nothing but thankful on these nights because I felt like life was good. I had a job, I loved a wife I loved and friends to celebrate with. I heard enough stories to know I was the lucky one. One Monday, I was at work after spending the day before at the beach with our friends. Wayne texted me that he had something to admit. He said yesterday at the beach, he accidentally saw my wife changing in one of the flimsy tents. They made eye contact, but she still didn't stop undressing. Instead, she smiled mischievously and continued showing him things until there wasn't anything more to show. He finally left when he was overcome with guilt. He was telling me the truth because he wanted to be honest and maintain our friendship. I thanked him, but I did have to ask him a favor. I needed him to step out of our lives for a while to discourage any wild emotions from arising in my wife. She needed to forget about this naughty behavior. Wayne agreed, but I could tell it was with reluctance. When I got home, I asked my wife how she felt about him. She was caught off guard and got a little defensive, asking me what I meant and why I was asking. I convinced her I wasn't trying to start a fight. I just wanted to know how she felt about him. She cautiously admitted that she had grown to care about him very much as Camilla, and she couldn't imagine our lives without him. Needless to say, she sounded a little too attached to my good friend. I think her head was swimming with feelings that stemmed from secretly stripping for him. My wife noticed almost immediately that Wayne was no longer present in our life. Pamela would come over for dinner and a game, but Wayne wasn't responding. Usually it was my task to invite my friend over. So she asked me where he was. I said he wouldn't be seeing us for a while because he had some personal things he needed to sort through. My wife immediately felt like this had something to do with what happened on the beach. I could tell because she seemed ashamed and worried that I knew something. She didn't know how to ask me. So a few awkward weeks passed after letting some peaceful time pass between us. She finally asked me if I heard anything from him. I just told her he was fine and asked her if there was anything she should tell me. She said no. So I went to work. I was growing impatient and wanted her to tell me the truth. While I was at work, our neighbor called me. There was a man who was visiting my wife while I was out. I raced home without telling my boss, busted down my own door and found my wife having sex with Wayne. I grabbed him and yanked him away before hitting him and knocking him to the floor. He jumped to his feet, put on his pants in a hurry and ran out of our house. I couldn't believe the man I just caught with my wife was my best friend. That wasn't the man I knew and trusted all those personal conversations we had where we helped each other through life's curveballs. Felt like a lie. Then I looked at my wife. She looked devastated, like I cheated on her. She started telling me she was sorry and that she couldn't help how she felt about AP. Knowing him all these years as a single man who longed for love made her care deeply until she couldn't resist giving herself to him. I told her she was nothing but a weak-willed, meaningless liar. I was the one that married her. I was the one that provided for her for years and trusted her with my life and love. I trusted her and my best friend to respect and honor me as much as I did them. I told her neither of them had to have sex with the other. It was just a spontaneous thing that turned them on, and they were so careless that they gave into it. I was now embarrassed to have her as my wife and him as my friend. So I refused to continue these relationships any longer. My speech got to her. She was shocked at the truth of what I said and admitted I was right. She proved herself to be untrustworthy and undeserving. She moved out, completely ashamed and remorseful. I knew she wouldn't have cheated on me again, but no one can really know that for sure. I knew that I'd always remembered that she cheated on me. That would make it extremely hard, if not impossible, to ever forgive her or stop doubting the legitimacy of our bond. My best friend never spoke to me or my wife again. Not even after our divorce. My ex lived with one of her co-workers and carpooled to work for a while. I don't know what happened after that because we stopped all communication. This was yet another perfect example of the terrible reality. Infidelity brings all the reasons. A marriage is beautiful and inspiring are the reasons why cheating on your spouse is ugly and remorseful. The bond and good times you all had together are forever tainted, and we only have so much time on this earth. The world would be a better place if everyone honored the spouse they took vows to. Whenever there's trouble, it's a far better option to separate than to cheat. A separation doesn't mean seeing other people. And it doesn't mean the end of the marriage. On the contrary, it can save a marriage while apart. Take the time to identify what drives the two of you apart and ask what can be done about it, then be as kind and honest with your spouse as possible. There are women out there that would refuse to give in to their lustful desires with anyone other than her husband. I hope you are able to find her one day. Best of luck to you. Now, let's get into our second story for today. My wife, 34 female, and I, 42 male, were married for 8 years when I was asked to travel out of state to oversee a company project for months. We talked about it for a few days but ultimately decided I should go for the pay. Although it would be a challenge to be apart for so long, I was confident my wife and I could get through it without a problem. After 8 years of marriage, we were in our prime time together. One thing was certain: we'd have a wonderful reunion. When it was over 4 months after I left home, it felt like it had been a year apart from my wife. She felt the same way. The physical separation and lack of emotional intimacy began taking its toll. I struggled to focus at work. It wasn't the same without seeing my wife each night to refuel my willpower to go on. When it came down to about a month left, I was working when I got a text from my married cousin. He said he was sitting outside my house in his car looking for me. He hadn't heard from me for a while, and it wasn't unlike him to make unexpected stops to say hi and catch up. I replied to him without another thought, letting him know I'd be home in about a month. Much to our surprise, I returned home to my wife. 1 week later, after our glorious and much-needed reunion, life returned to normal. My wife started to act a little forlorn, like her mind was elsewhere. I was overjoyed to be home, and I figured it was just one of her normal mood fluctuations. Then my cousin knocked on our door. When I answered it, he was holding flowers, smelled fresh, and was clearly dressed to impress. As soon as he saw me, he threw the flowers and ran toward his car. I tackled him and demanded to know why he was here. He said it was the wrong house, but that made no sense. He knew I lived here, he knew my wife lived here. I picked him up by his ear and asked if he was here to woo my wife. Just then she came out screaming, telling me to stop. I asked them both if they saw each other while I was gone. My wife said no, but she was sobbing. I asked what was going on then, and neither of them had a reasonable answer. They denied ever seeing each other without me present. The next day, the flowers were still driving me crazy. If my cousin wasn't here to see my wife, then why? I asked my cousin for the truth over text. I told him I deserved to know and wouldn't harm him no matter what the truth was. Minutes later, he admitted to everything over text. A week ago, my wife had arrived home to find my cousin waiting in his car when he told her why he was there. She was smiling and very sweet. She told him I'd be back in a little while and invited him inside for drinks while they waited for me. After a few drinks, she told him that I wasn't really coming home for another month and it had already been 4. She told him she was lonely and assured him I would never find out if he pleasured her until I got back after they had sex. She said it was wonderful and I never had to know about it with my blood boiling. I went to my wife as she cooked dinner and shoved my phone in her face, showing her the text and screaming for her to get out when she tried to object, because she was cooking. I threw the pan across the room, hot food splattered everywhere and she started wailing. She said she was sorry that she needed me in her life and what they did had no emotion behind it whatsoever. I just told her to pack her stuff and get out. Not only has she ruined our marriage, but she also ruined my cousin's marriage. She asked how, implying that she didn't expect my cousin's wife to ever find out. I told her I was going to tell everyone what they did, especially the male participants' wife. She deserved to know as much as me. My wife was beside herself, begging me incoherently not to divorce her. I reasoned with her, saying that it would be heartbreaking to spend another moment in each other's presence, knowing there was nothing we could do to fix her mistake. Everything we had was over and done. Besides that, even if she tried to stay, it would only be a matter of time before I obtained a legal order for her to vacate. She left going through the motions. I told my cousin's wife by forwarding his text with my own addition. I told her he was only at my house to check on me since we hadn't spoken for a while. My wife lied to him to get him in the house, got him to have a few drinks before telling him I wasn't coming, and then told him to have sex with her. My wife failed to be as honorable and considerate as my cousin attempted to be. Then when he was presented with this temptation, he felt too. His wife had no mercy and filed for divorce too. He didn't have to have sex with my wife. He just wanted to. This situation here was a classic marital trial and she failed because of her weakness. She seduced another member of your family and ruined his marriage as well. None of this pain and suffering had to occur. It happened because of her. I believe you did the right thing by divorcing and telling your cousin's wife the truth. This doesn't always happen, but when it does, it's heartbreaking because it was avoidable and unnecessary. People become impatient, selfish and inconsiderate without a second thought, and it never ends. Well, you have a fresh start and sound mind. Focus on yourself and the optimism you need to get through times like this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoy listening, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you haven't already, also comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.